I'm Soledad O'Brien. Welcome to Matter of Fact. The Supreme Court decision repealing Roe v. Wade is having a bigger impact than just limiting access to abortion services. It creates an uncertain future for the tens of thousands of medical students who want to practice in obstetrics and gynecology. They are required to learn abortion-related procedures to complete certification. More than 40% of the country's OBGYN residency programs are in states that have banned abortion or are likely to do so. Our correspondent, Dan Lieberman, traveled to Wisconsin to see how medical students with very different views on abortion are navigating a post-Roe America.
When I heard that Roe v. Wade had been overturned, I was very happy to hear that.
Ruby Gravrock is a devout Catholic and a third-year medical school student in La Crosse, Wisconsin.
My faith is the most important thing to me, and it does impact every aspect of my life. And obviously medicine is going to be a very large part of that life.
23-year-old Ruby is considering becoming an OBGYN, but her residency would require training in abortion, a procedure she's firmly against.
What kind of doctor would I be if I chose to intentionally kill one of my patients?
The Accreditation Council, responsible for graduate medical training programs, still requires all residents get abortion training, but that residents who have a religious or moral objection may opt out.
The council states that, quote, "We feel that abortion or evacuating the uterus is a core procedure for OBGYN. It's also used for management of miscarriages and complications of pregnancy like infection and bleeding. So it's a technique that has to be learned."
That is not an induced abortion. If a mother's life is being put in danger by her pregnancy, the fastest and safest option is to deliver the baby.
A lot of times those patients, if we aren't acting in a timely fashion, can get significantly worse or even potentially have an outcome of death. I really think it's not about personal beliefs, it's about providing essential health care.
Dr. Sadia Haider is an OBGYN and director of family planning at Rush University in Illinois, a state where abortion services remain legal, putting extra pressure on Rush's already competitive residency program.
So you have 6 spots for residents here?
I think we're over 1,000 applications this year for those 6 spots.
I mean, that's just staggering.
I know.
I made this map and color-coded it based on the state laws.
Fourth-year medical school student Zoe Schultz knows firsthand how tough it is this year.
There's basically a bottleneck for accessing those spots. It keeps me up at night worrying about not getting adequately trained in abortion and ending up somewhere where I wouldn't have access to that training.
Is it important to you to stay here and be a practicing physician in Wisconsin, your home state?
Yeah, this is where I grew up. I would have found a lot of meaning in being able to fill the gap and increase access to abortion care in my state.
Okay. They worry that if they go to a state that doesn't have all of the training available to them, that they may not be able to take care of people in need later.
Dr. Laura Jacques is the Director of Medical Student Education for OBGYN at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. She meets with students like Zoe who are navigating this new reality.
There's a thought in this country that abortions happen in clinics like Planned Parenthood and that they're in this very neat box, and by banning that procedure, then everything will be fine. But I think many people don't understand the far-reaching consequences of this decision.
This way.
If you're in a state where you can't learn abortion care as part of your residency program, are you still going to seek that training elsewhere?
Yeah, personally, I'm really committed to being an abortion provider, so I'm going to seek out that training during residency no matter what. If I'm in a place where abortion is not legal, I'm really worried about the moral injury that would cause to me as a resident doctor by having to deny someone crucial health care that could be damaging to their psychological or physical health.
The rule is to do no harm to both of your patients. If the option is kill one of the patients, how is that doing less harm?
Do you ever think about a different specialty within medicine where you might not even have to face these moments?
If we ran away from everything that scared us, what would that make us? And how would that leave my patients who need my care? I have thought about pursuing different fields, but I wouldn't feel as fulfilled unless I were working with women and children.
For Matter of Fact, I'm Dan Lieberman.